just kept thinking. That would have been fine with me. So this morning's message is kind of a continuation of last time I preached, and it sure seemed like it wasn't very long already. Time flies. But at this rate, maybe by the time, this time next year, we'll have made it through the book, book of Ephesians. So, we've been listening to some messages on the last couple of Thursday evenings here at the church on Ephesians. So, I make a plug again for Thursday evening at 6:30, right? 6:30. So, we've been listening to some messages on Ephesians and having some discussions on that. So I was concerned that the messages from Thursday were going to steal my thunder, or better yet, we could just play them and then I wouldn't have to be up here. So let's get some background on the book of Ephesians. And to do this, we need to go to the book of Acts to lay a foundation for Paul's epistle or letter to the people of Ephesus. So Ephesus was a major city of travel and of commerce and culture in the Roman Empire. And for a brief time at the end of his second missionary journey, and then for 2 to 3 years on his third missionary journey, the Apostle Paul ministered to the church at Ephesus. He actually started and started building it. So while he was there, Paul saw many converted to faith in Jesus. In Acts 19 and 20, it says, a number who would practice sorcery brought their scrolls together and burned them publicly. In this way, the way of the Lord spread widely and grew in power. As well, many others opposed his preaching. One prominent silversmith, story in Acts, Demetrius, he made idols for the worship of the Greek god Artemis, whose temple was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Well, he found his business suffering because people were converting to Christianity. So he basically convinced his fellow workers in the business to cause trouble. And actually a near riot led Paul to leave the city, but only after he had done much to grow the Christian community there. So Paul wrote the letter to the Ephesians sometime around AD 60 or 61. And it was during a time that Paul sat in a Roman prison and where he wrote the letter to the Ephesians, making Ephesians one of the 4 epistles commonly known as the prison epistles. The others being Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. So Ephesians deals with what it means to be a Christian, both in faith and practice, more so than any particular problem in the church at Ephesus that he had to deal with in other letters that he wrote to different churches. So Chuck Swindoll puts it this way. Paul divided his letter to the Ephesians into 2 clear segments. Applying the truths of the first makes possible the actions and lifestyle of the second. Paul spent the first 3 chapters of the letter discussing God's creation of a holy community by his gift of grace in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The members of this community have been chosen by God through the work of Christ, adopted as sons and daughters of God, and brought near to the Father through faith in his Son. All people with this faith, Jews and Gentiles alike, were dead in their transgressions and sin, but have been made alive because of the person and work of Jesus Christ. So the book of Ephesians hits on a wide range of moral and ethical behaviors designed to ensure believers are living up to their heavenly calling. As we continue in our faith from day to day, month to month, year to year, the temptation to get comfortable always exists. However, Paul presented the gift of God in Christ and the benefits we receive so clearly that we cannot help but ask ourselves if our lives reflect that reality as we should. So our key text this morning is found in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. This is why it is said, "Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil." So, do you ever say, "I can't believe it's already, the summer is already over. It's already September." Ever say anything like that? "I can't believe it's already the beginning of another school year." So where did the time go? Just the other day, summer was just beginning, and I was hoping at the swimming pool for the third straight summer. So, do you remember back just a few short months ago, making New Year's resolutions? Did anybody make any New Year's resolutions? No? Okay. You gave up on those a long time ago. Maybe some of you might have, if you didn't do them, maybe some tried the challenge to read through the Bible. Anybody do that? The challenge we have up here to read through the Bible in a year? And then you got to the begats. Remember the begats? So-and-so begat them, and so-and-so begat them. Or maybe like me, you were going to work out and get back into shape. Robin, she likes to run, and so we were talking to a high school classmate of mine a couple of weeks ago at my high school reunion, and she said something like she ran 7 miles a day or 3 times a week. What was it? Something like that. A classmate of mine running 7 miles every few days, or quite often anyway. I know Robin's not going to believe this, but I used to run 10 miles a day a long time ago. And well, maybe it wasn't quite every day, but I used to run quite a bit. So it got me thinking. I was thinking about the movie Forrest Gump. Anybody seen the movie Forrest Gump? So one day the main character, Forrest Gump, played by Tom Hanks, because of the things that were going on in his life, just starts running. And he runs and runs across the country more than once. He runs through all kinds of weather, through all the seasons, for, as Forrest tells it, 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours. And, as Forrest also put it, he slept when he needed to, he ate when he was hungry, and he went to, when he needed to. And then one day, at mile marker 13 on U.S. Highway 163 in Mexican Hat, Utah, he just decided that he was done. But here's the thing. That's probably not how we would do our New Year's resolutions. We didn't just decide to quit. We just kind of faded over time. It wasn't that we woke up one day and said, I don't want to do this anymore. It was more like, man, I'm just not feeling it today. I'll do it tomorrow. So just day by day, small decision after small decision, added up to a change in our plan. And we just slowly faded, just kind of drifted. And we start to do that with our Christian life. It's just one weekend, I'm on vacation. Or, I just have to get this one thing done, I'll just skip church this week. No one just decided that they wanted their relationship with God to grow cold or distant. It was just one small decision. But it's small decisions compounded over time that shape the direction of our lives. Pastor and Christian author Chuck Swindoll, in his book, The Church Awakening, tells a story about when he was a kid visiting his maternal grandfather in South Texas. His grandfather had a small cabin near a cliff leading down to the bay that was nearby. And Chuck recounts one summer day, his grandfather telling him how every year the cliff would wear away, and how his grandfather used this word called erosion. They measured the distance from the edge of the cliff to a distant point and hammered a stake in the ground to mark the spot. The next summer, when Chuck returned, they measured the distance from the cliff to the marked spot. The distance was 8 inches shorter than the previous year. He says that he would never have noticed if they hadn't marked the spot. The next year, his grandfather wrote him and said that 12 more inches were gone. He goes on to say that in part of Webster's definition of erode, it says, to eat into or away by slow destruction of substance. Chuck Swindoll goes on to say that the slow, silent, and subtle effects of erosion are not only a concern to us physically, they are an even greater concern spiritually. Christian writer C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Screwtape Letters, wrote, "Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts." So Paul, on his third missionary journey, has had a lot of success in starting and building the church at Ephesus. But now, only a few years later, Paul is writing this letter to the Ephesian church saying, wake up. You're starting to look like the rest of the culture. Wake up. Some biblical scholars argue that the admonition to wake up was written to unbelievers because it says, rise from the dead, while other scholars argue that it is meant for believers. I would tend to go with the latter group, simply because the letter is actually written to the believers in the church. So how did this happen? That the Apostle Paul has to write to this church that had started so strong, and just a few years later, and to have to say, wake up. Actually, it's easy. As Grant Patrick put it, all you have to do to drift is nothing. You see, the gravitational pull of a broken world does not promote godliness. So if you do nothing, the current of this world will pull you not towards godliness, but towards selfishness. So, Robin and I have an ongoing battle over the grass. Actually over watering the grass. So she keeps turning the timer up longer and longer, and I keep trying to turn it back down. I haven't done that for a while. So, excuse me. But you know, if you want stuff to grow, yeah, flowers. Robin, she used to say she could grow anything, but she's growing quite a few flowers and stuff now. But you want it to grow, you have to water, right? And some things you have to fertilize. She's always buying this fertilizer stuff or whatever, putting it on the flower. But so you have to water it, you have to fertilize it. But not weeds. All you have to do for weeds to grow is do nothing. If you do nothing, weeds will grow. And this is kind of how life works. If you do nothing, the gravitational pull of a broken world will not pull you towards godliness, but push you from it. So Paul writes to the Ephesian church, a church that had started so strong, but now it's looking more like the culture than the king, and says, wake up. So as we were listening to the messages on Thursday, the last one on last Thursday, Pastor Adrian was talking about verses 8 through 10 of chapter 2 of Ephesians. Remember? And I was thinking that as we were watching, that we could just watch that this morning, and that those verses kind of sum up the whole book of Ephesians. It's basically saying, now that you know this about God, it should change the way you live. So the first 3 chapters are about God's grace to us. And this grace is a free gift from God. But we can't leave off the second part. It costs nothing to receive the gift of grace, but it costs everything to respond to it. Chapters 1 through 3 are what we should believe. Chapters 4 through 6 are how we are to live because of that grace. The R.C. Sproul put it this way: our beliefs dictate our behavior. If we are truly in Christ, we will have a desire to be like Christ. So, are we, as I talked about last time, living out our dash, worthy of God's calling? Are we watering and fertilizing and being diligent about our faith? Are we doing nothing and just allowing the weeds to grow? Are we making the most of opportunity, as it says in verse 16? Do we see any parallels to the church today, the church in Ephesus? It seems that in the not too distant past, I can remember the church, not just the local covenant church, but the church as a whole, seemed like it was strong, brimming with vitality and growing. But now I see so many statistics and polls and things telling us that the bad news about how people, and especially young people, are rejecting the church. And I can see it with my own eyes, not only just through the polls. But I also see some hopeful signs too. Sometimes you see in the news about revivals on college campuses here recently, and other places around the world that might seem hostile to the gospel, where people are coming to the Lord. So the question is, are we doing our part, or are we sleeping on the job? My youngest daughter, Danny, our youngest daughter, she, when she was over in Phillipsburg working for TFC for a year, she'd have me make sure she got up in the morning. And then when she moved back to the Denver area, every morning, she has me make sure that she gets up and gets ready for work. So every morning she texts me, I text her back and forth at night, say, well, okay, what time in the morning? And she'll text me. And then, in the morning, I set my alarm and text her and say, get up. Actually, I say, yo, go, go. And finally she'll answer this. She'll usually say, 5 more minutes, please. So 5 more minutes, I'll text her back, and sometimes she'll go, okay, last time, 5 more minutes. But it's a little funny story about waking out. But the question here is, does God need to give us a wake-up call?
Maybe she just